I just moved to Delia Street when I spotted him, my new neighbor, tall, tan, shredded as hell and doing yard work shirtless. I couldn't stop staring through the window like a creep. "See something you like?" he called out, catching me gawking. Sabrato booted the curtain. "Sorry, I didn't mean to stare. Just getting settled in." He strolled over, smirking. "No need to apologize. I put on a show for the new neighbors." His chest glistened with sweat as he stuck out a hand. "I'm Rob, the hot guy next door." I rolled my eyes but shook it, Keith. "And modest too, I see." "Just stating facts." Rob winked. "Maybe you can show me around, help me get settled in." Was he flirting? I felt myself blushing. Yeah, sure, once I'm unpacked. "Can't wait." Rob squeezed my hand before sauntering off. I watched his tight-ass flex with every step. This neighborhood was about to get very interesting. Despite our awkward first encounter, Rob didn't shy away from being a flirtatious pest. Every time I stepped outside, he'd lounge shirtless on his porch with a novel or do loud grunting workouts in his yard, or just putting himself on display. Enjoying the view, he'd call out with a devilish grin. I'd just scowl and head back inside, my face beat red. Part of me loved the attention, but I didn't want to come across as the thirsty new guy on the block. A few days later, I was grilling some chicken for dinner when Rob moseyed on over. "Smells awesome," he said, looming behind me. "Need an extra set of hands?" I stiffened as his chest pressed against my back. I had got it covered. "You sure?" His breath tickled my neck. "I give a great massage after cooking. Really work out those knotted muscles." I gulped at the thought of his hands roaming my body. "That's mighty friendly of you." Rob chuckled deeply. "I'm a real friendly guy, Keith, especially with neighbors I like." Our eyes locked, the tension thicker than the barbecue smoke. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Despite my attempts to keep things platonic with Rob, our chemistry was undeniable. We just clicked. Maybe it was our similar senses of humor or love of cooking, but we quickly became inseparable. "Dude, you've got to try this barbecue sauce," I said one afternoon, pulling him in for a taste test. Our lips nearly brushed against the spoon before I pulled away. Rob licked his lips slowly. Delicious, though I bet you'd taste even better." I felt myself blush again. This flirtatious banter was becoming routine for us. Part of me craved taking it further, but I wasn't sure if Rob was just being a tease or actually interested. Later, we grabbed beers and watched a game on his patio. As the night wore on, our thighs and shoulders kept brushing together on the love seat. "Scoot over, man," I finally said. "You're kind of hogging the space here." Rather than move away, Rob draped his arm over the back of the couch, pulling me in close. "There, now we can both watch properly." I tensed up at his warm body pressing against me, trying to focus on the TV, but my mind kept drifting to thoughts of laying my head on his chest. The lingering touches, the flirty banter, the way Rob would catch my eye and hold my gaze. It was becoming too much to ignore. I was undeniably attracted to my neighbor, and I had a feeling the interest was mutual. One night after demolishing a frozen pizza together, our hands brushed as we reached for the last slice. An electric jolt shot through me. "You take it," Rob murmured, not pulling his hand away. I licked some sauce from my lips. "Why don't we share it?" Rob's eyes dropped to my mouth, his pupils burning with want. "Now there's an idea." Slowly, he raised the slice to my lips. I opened up, taking a bite and letting the grease trickle down my chin. Rob watched intently, transfixed, as I licked it off with one swipe of my tongue. "Keith," he set the pizza down and cupped my face, pulling me in closer. "You've got a little something. Right here." Our mouths hovered barely an inch apart. I could feel his hot breath fanning across my lips. This was it, the moment I'd been craving. "Dad, you down here?" My daughter's voice made us jump apart like startled cats. "I'm headed to Lisa's." "Yes, okay, honey," I called back, flustered. Rob avoided eye contact, suddenly very interested in his beer bottle. After Kendra left, a heavy silence hung between us. Had we really been about to kiss? I snuck a glance at Rob, his chest heaving. Part of me wanted to just grab him and pick up where we left off, but something held me back. The awkward tension lingered between Rob and me for days after our almost kiss. Part of me regretted not just going for it, but the other part wondered if giving in to my desires was a mistake. I tried to act normal around him, but it was impossible with Kendra home. How could I make a move with my daughter around? As a single dad, I had responsibilities. Then, one sunny afternoon, the opportunity arose. Kendra was at a friend's house while Rob tanned shirtless on his lawn chair. I knew I should stay inside, but I couldn't resist. "Grilling up some burgers," I said, trying to sound casual as I stepped outside. "One?" Rob peeled off his sunglasses, his toned chest glistening. "Sure, but you missed a spot." "Huh?" Smirking, he reached over and smeared a dab of mustard onto my bare pec. "Right there." I gulped as he slowly licked it off, his rough tongue dragging along my skin. "You're all set." This is the burger patty sizzled, but it was Rob's piercing gaze that made me feel unbearably hot. Seizing the moment, I grabbed his arm and yanked him close until our bodies pressed flush together. "Keith," he breathed, cupping the back of my neck. "Are you sure about this?" I silenced him with a bruising kiss, pouring all the built-up tension into our lip lock. Rob groaned into my mouth, his hands roaming down to grope my ass. So we made out feverishly, all groping hands and dueling tongues right there in broad daylight. The burners were sputtering and shooting up flames behind us, but I didn't care. I had the hots for my shirtless neighbor, and he wanted me just as badly. Things escalated quickly after our heated makeout session. Rob practically dragged me inside, our hands roaming wildly as we crashed through his front door. Clothes went flying, and next thing I knew we were buck naked and going at it like horny teenagers on his living room floor. I arched my back with a strangled cry as Rob buried himself deeper, pounding into me with primal grunts. Our slick bodies rutted together, all thoughts of neighbors or propriety abandoned. This felt too damn good to stop. Afterward, we lay tangled and spent, Rob tracing lazy circles across my chest hair. "Damn, that was amazing," he murmured, planting a soft kiss on my jawline. As I hummed contentedly, basking in the afterglow before reality set in. "So what now?" Rob propped himself up on one elbow, studying me with those piercing blue eyes. "I don't know about you, but I could go for round 2 in a bit." I chuckled and gave his bicep a playful shove. "You know what I mean? Like, are we just messing around here, or, Rob quirked an eyebrow, hardly able to suppress his grin. "Or is this, something more?" Rob opened his mouth to respond, but a sharp ringing cut him off. Frowning, he rolled over and grabbed his phone from the coffee table. "Everything okay, babe?" My heart plummeted at the feminine voice on the other end. Rob had a girlfriend, a wife. I scrambled to grab my crumpled clothes, panic and shame flooding me. By the time Rob ended the call, I was scrambling out the door, trying to blink back hot tears. I stormed back to my place, humiliated and fighting back tears. How could I have been so stupid? Of course Rob was spoken for. A stud like that doesn't stay single for long. I ripped off the sheets, desperate to remove any lingering traces of his scent. As the anger faded, shame and regret set in. I'd allowed myself to be some cheating side piece without a second thought. So much for being a respectable single dad. Rob must have sensed he'd crossed the line because he mercifully kept his distance over the next few days. No flirty jeers or shirtless gardening displays. Though part of me ached to see him, I knew keeping my distance was for the best. Then one evening, a tentative knock came at my door. I pulled it open to find Rob sheepishly holding a birthday cupcake with one candle. "For Kendra?" I asked, my voice brittle. "It's for you, actually." Rob refused to meet my eyes. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see right now, but I owed you an explanation at least." I wanted to slam the door in his stupid, handsome face. But despite my better judgment, something compelled me to hear him out. "Duck," I said flatly, leaning against the doorframe. Rob wet his lips nervously. "The woman on the phone, that was my wife, Jess. But I swear, man, it's not what you think." I recoiled in disbelief. "Not what I think. You're a married, cheating bastard. That's what I think." As I moved to slam the door, Rob's anguished voice stopped me. "She's my wife, sure, but in name only. We're not actually together. It's complicated." I faltered, curiosity getting the better of me as Rob launched into his explanation. "Jess and I have been best friends since we were kids," Rob explained, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "When she got diagnosed with IMS and ended up in a wheelchair, she was convinced no guy would ever want to be with her. That's when the idea of us getting married came up." I raised an incredulous eyebrow. "You married your friend out of pity?" "Not pity," Rob corrected. "Jess is the most important person in my life. I wanted to take care of her and be her family since she didn't think she'd ever have that, but it's strictly platonic between us." Despite myself, I felt a flicker of hope rekindle in my chest. "So you and her, you've never—" "No way, man," Rob shook his head adamantly. "I'm 100A. The marriage is just a formality to me and Jess." 1,000 questions swirled in my mind, but one took precedence. If that's true, then why didn't you just tell me about her from the start? Why let things get so out of hand between us? Rob's shoulders slumped with a defeated sigh. "Honestly, I got scared. Once I started developing real feelings for you, I didn't know how to bring up the whole Jess situation without driving you away." My breath hitched at his admission. Feelings, for me, part of me wanted to stay pissed, but the heartache smothered any lingering anger. "I'm so sorry, Keith," Rob continued, taking a tentative step towards me. "I never meant to hurt you or betray your trust like that. Our eyes locked, and I saw the naked vulnerability shining in his baby blues. I'd never seen someone look at me with such unbridled tenderness before. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to forgive him. I searched Rob's remorseful eyes, wavering on the edge of forgiveness. As furious as I'd been, it was clear he truly cared for me, and the whole Jess situation, while bizarre, didn't seem malicious. Before I could respond, a voice called out from behind Rob. "There you are." A woman in a wheelchair rolled up beside him, smiling warmly at me. I immediately recognized her from photographs in Rob's house. "You must be Keith," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Jess." First, I gaped back and forth between them, utterly bewildered. "You're his wife? The one he told me about?" "Well, wife is a bit of a stretch," Jess chuckled. "More like a lifelong best friend with a legal document." Rob rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. "See, I told you it's complicated." "But you have an open thing going on, right?" I sputtered, "like you're fine with Rob dating other people." Jess arched an amused eyebrow. "Other people? Honey, I'm the one who shoved Rob out the door and told him to finally make a move on you." My jaw dropped. This couldn't be real. "You knew about me and him this whole time?" "Of course." Jess laughed brightly. "I'm not blind. I could see the hard eyes and sexual tension from a mile away, which is why I think you two boneheads need to quit moping and just be together already." I shot Rob an astonished look, hardly able to process this bizarre turn of events. He rubbed his nape again, a shy grin tugging at his lip. "Subtlety isn't exactly Jess's strong suit," he said, with a small shrug. "Look, Keith, I know this is a lot to take in." "You're telling me," I muttered faintly. Rob took my hand, his calloused palm rough, but warm. "I meant it when I said I have real feelings for you. If you can find a way to look past all this craziness, I'd love for us to actually give this a fair shot." My gaze flickered over to Jess, who gave me an encouraging smile and a dab of her wheelchair. I couldn't believe I was actually considering taking this leap. I looked from Jess's warm, reassuring smile to Rob's intense yet hopeful expression, silently pleading for me to understand. My mind was still reeling from the revelations. The secret marriage, Jess's supportiveness, Rob's evident feelings for me. But one thing was clear. I liked this guy, a lot, probably more than I had liked anyone else before. "Dad, you home?" Kendra's voice carried in from the front door, shattering the tension of the moment. Jess quickly wiped her thumbs across her eyes, avoiding my gaze as Rob and I turned toward my daughter. "In here, honey?" I called out. "Hey, Dad. Oh, hi, Mr. Roberts." Kendra's voice trailed off as she entered the living room, looking quizzically between Rob, Jess, and me. An awkward hush fell over us, the kind of silence you'd hear in a comedy right before a punchline or crescendo of laughter. Then Kendra's face split into a bright, lively grin. Well, did I just catch my dad finally getting his balls up to ask you out, Mr. Roberts?" "Kendra," I cried out, her cheekily raised eyebrow reminding me so much of Rob's expression just minutes before. I shot him an apologetic look, but the big doofus just grinned back at me. "Something like that," he chuckled, holding my gaze as his eyes crinkled at the corners. "I'm working on it." I couldn't help but return his smile, heart still hammering in my chest. Who knew that after literally a whole ass coming around, it would end up being this easy? "Well, it's about damn time," Kendra laughed, plopping down on the couch next to Jess. "I was beginning to think you two numbskulls would never stop dancing around each other." I shot her a warning look, but she just stuck her tongue out playfully. For a teenager, she sure had a mouthy streak, though I couldn't really blame her. The unresolved sexual tension between Rob and me was almost painfully obvious. "Language, young lady," Jess chided with a wry grin. "But she does make a fair point. You boys have been driving me up a wall with all your pitiful pining." "Hey, now be nice," Rob said, unable to hide his smirk as he sidled up next to me. Keith was just taking his sweet time working up the nerve to ask me out. "Oh, is that what you're calling it?" I scoffed, giving his bicep a light shove. Our eyes met and held, that same crackling charge passing between us. Suddenly, I felt like a couple of love-struck teens all over again. Kendra made an exaggerated gagging sound. "Get a room, you two." "Don't mind if we do," Rob murmured, looping an arm around my waist to pull me flush against him. The heated look he gave me made my knees go weak. Before I could make a snarky comeback, Rob captured my lips in a searing kiss. I melted into his embrace, my protest melting away to contented hums. Who cared if we had an audience? After weeks of longing, I finally had Rob in my arms again. When we finally broke apart, Jess and Kendra were grinning like idiots. "About damn time," my daughter repeated with a salacious wink. With a shared laugh, Rob squeezed my hand, conveying everything I needed to know without words. No matter how crazy this situation was, we'd finally make this thing work. Over the next few weeks, Rob and I tried our best to keep things low-key around the neighborhood. But after so much unresolved tension, now that we were finally together, it was almost impossible to keep our hands off each other. Get a room, you two. Mrs. Jensen's reedy voice carried across her yard one afternoon as Rob had me pinned against the side of my house, devouring my neck with hot, open-mouthed kisses. I shot her a lascivious grin, not even trying to be subtle as I groped Rob's firm ass. Don't mind if we do. Pulling back, Rob laughed breathlessly and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. Maybe we should take this inside, handsome, before we really give the neighborhood busybodies something to gossip about. Since when do you care what that old crow thinks? I teased, nipping at his pouty lower lip. Rob growled playfully and caught my wandering hands. I don't give a damn about her. I just want you all to myself, for once, without an audience. The gravelly lust in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. As much as I love messing around where we could get caught, the thought of having Rob in bed, slick skin sliding together without distractions. I grabbed a fistful of his shirt and dragged him inside, our mouths crashing back together in a hungry kiss. Rob chuckled against my lips as I kicked the front door shut behind us. Minutes later, we lay panting and sated, the afternoon sun filtering through the curtains. Rob trailed his fingertips up and down my damp chest hair, humming contentedly. Well, I'd say that definitely gave the prudes next door an eyeful. He quirked an eyebrow at me. Then again, maybe hearing two dudes going at it will finally make that uptight bitch log off next door for once. I let out a snort of laughter, swatting his chest. You're terrible. Yeah. Rob rolled over, bracing himself above me with his sculpted arms. How about I give you something else to complain about then? He sealed his lips over mine, effectively swallowing any snarky reply I could muster. A lazy, languid round too quickly became our top priority for the afternoon. Later that evening, Rob and I strolled hand in hand down the street to grab some dinner. I couldn't stop grinning like an idiot, feeling lighter than I had in years. Screw the neighbors' judgy looks. At this point, I was just happy to have my man at my side. As we passed Mrs. Jensen's place, that dried-up old bitch actually had the audacity to cup her hands around her mouth and holler, "Shameless sodomites." I opened my mouth to fire back a nasty retort, but Rob simply squeezed my hand and shook his head at me with a small smirk. Before I could protest, a familiar voice piped up from the other direction. "Why don't you mind your own business for once, Ethel?" Jess wheeled up behind us, eyes narrowed at the nosy neighbor. "Your jealousy is showing." Mrs. Jensen sputtered indignantly. "Jay jealous? Of you crippled freaks? As if—" "That's my wife you're talking about, you miserable cow," Rob growled, taking a protective step forward. I grabbed his arm to hold him back as Jess rolled her eyes. "Nice try, Ethel, but we all know I'm the one having to constantly hear about your husband's pathetic performance between the sheets." I coughed to stifle a guffaw as Mrs. Jensen turned beet red, seemingly struck speechless for once. With a dainty wave, Jess spun her wheelchair around and gestured for us to follow. "Come on, boys, let's grab some grub before the bitch lets out her next shrieking menopausal mating call." Chuckling, Rob and I fell into step beside her. I threw an arm around his shoulders, unable to shake my grin. "You've got to teach me that kind of moxie," I murmured, pressing a kiss to Rob's temple. He just beamed back up at me, eyes bright with mischief. "Believe me, with Jess around to keep us in line, you'll pick it up in no time." Over dinner, Jess dropped a bombshell that nearly made me choke on my burger. "So, I've been thinking," she took a dainty sip of her beer, "Rob and I should get divorced." I did a double take, gawking between her and Rob. "Seriously, but you two seem so—" "Relax, Keith," Rob chuckled, squeezing my thigh under the table. "It's not like that." Jess waved a dismissive hand. Our marriage was really just a formality, a way for me to think I was securing a future when my missus made me feel so hopeless and unlovable. She reached across the table to pat Rob's hand, but this lug helped show me I don't need to be someone's wife to have a real family, especially now with you around. She shot me a warm smile that made my chest tighten. Rob took over, giving her fingers an affectionate squeeze. "Jess will always be the most important person in my life, but you're my partner now, Keith. I want to be able to make that official someday if you'll have me." My heart stuttered at the tenderness in his eyes. This amazing, caring man wanted to spend his life with me. A single dad with plenty of baggage. I blinked back, the moisture prickling my eyes as Rob continued. "Obviously, Jess would still live with us. She's stuck with my dumb ass whether she likes it or not." He threw her a wink, lightening the heavy moment. Jess snorted. "Unfortunately, you're not wrong. Lord knows I couldn't ditch you two idiots, even if I wanted to." The three of us dissolved into easy laughter. As I looked between Rob's adoring gaze and Jess's warm acceptance, I realized this was my family now. Unconventional and unexpected, but overflowing with love all the same. And I couldn't wait to embrace every minute of this crazy new adventure. Later that night, I laid awake in bed, Rob's muscular arm draped across my waist as he snored lightly beside me. My mind kept drifting back to the life-altering events of the past few months. Just half a year ago, I was a jaded, closed-off single dad who had resigned myself to never finding love again after my wife's death. Then this gorgeous, kind-hearted beefcake strutted into my life, awakening desires I thought were long buried. Despite the rocky road of misunderstandings and curveballs thrown our way, fate or deliciously devious scheming by our loved ones brought Rob and me together at last. And not just me and him, Jess and Kendra too, completing our unconventional little family unit. I turned my head to study Rob's slack, boyishly handsome features in the moonlight. His lush lips were slightly parted, dark lashes fanning across those chiseled cheekbones that had first captured my attention all those weeks ago. My shirtless teenage dream man, now the incredible partner helping to reshape my life. A lump formed in my throat as I drank in his peaceful expression. So much pain and grief overshadowed my world after losing Anna. I never imagined finding that kind of soul-deep intimacy and connection again. But staring at Rob's perfect face, I knew without a doubt, this man was my fresh start, my second chance at happiness. He and Jess and Kendra accepted me with all my baggage, filling the hollows in my heart in the most unexpectedly wonderful way. As if he could sense my eyes on him, Rob stirred slightly, lips curving into a soft, sleepy smile. "What you thinking about over there, handsome?" he murmured groggily. I leaned over to brush a tender kiss across that warm, inviting mouth. "Just how lucky I am to have you three in my life." Rob blinked up at me drowsily before tugging me close, our bare chests pressing flush as his arms enveloped me in a bone-melting embrace. His intoxicating body heat, the steadying thump of his heartbeat against my cheek, this was home. No matter what curveballs life threw from here, I knew we could handle it together, our unexpected little family of four.